Doing? Uh, this stream is a sort of impromptu stream, and it's actually happening outdoors. This is an outdoor stream, change, and I'm in the sunny Caribbean here amongst the vegetation plants, peace plants behind me there, pigeon peace plants. I'm actually underneath some fig trees, shooting this video for you guys. I want to do a little breakdown of Artur Beterbiev versus Callum Smith a bit because I'm listening to everybody saying this guy's unbeatable and Callum Smith has a version of boxing like Bivol. Some people are believing that Beterbiev will just do what he did to uh, do the same thing he did to Callum Smith to Bivol. And that's not the case. So let's talk a little bit about that as we look at boxing, because this is boxing. And we'll also talk about other topics that you guys would want to talk about as well. So at this time, I just want to quickly go through a piece of scripture, John 3:16. You can check it out. For the Most High loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but they'll live forever. And I thought I'd always go back on that piece of scripture when I think about, the love of God and how important it is in our lives. All right, so let's talk some boxing. So first of all, there's a couple things that a lot of you went over a lot of you guys' heads, but it was in the fight, and if you were paying attention, you would see these things. Okay, the first thing that you should have been paying attention to was that Callum Smith, he throws long punches. When he tried to shorten up his punches, he overextended himself and still missed. He missed Artur Beterbiev. That's because Callum, he fights well long. And Beterbiev was fighting at mid-range. And while Callum does mix it up, he has long arms, as you can tell. He's a long guy. So for him to shorten up his shots was a problem. The other thing I noticed was that Callum really isn't that quick and sharp a fighter as I thought he was. Beterbiev is a lot sharper, and he actually was a lot quicker than Callum. Callum looked like, I don't know what happened to Callum, but he looked lackluster. He looked like he was pushing his punches, so I don't know what happened. I don't know if he overtrained or what. It reminded me of what he looked like when he fought Canelo. Canelo's a quick fighter as well, sharp fighter, right? And so the same thing that Canelo did to Callum, Beterbiev did to Callum. He was able to cut the distance. He was able to even land his jab on Callum. But that was because Beterbiev actually positioned himself. He put himself in a position. So instead of stepping directly in front of Callum, he went to the outside of Callum's jabbing hand. He went to the inside of Callum's jabbing hand, and then he would throw his jab so that he would have a shorter distance to Callum. And that's kind of interesting because he was kind of towards Callum's power hand. Very interesting what his approach was. But even though he did make that adjustment in terms of angle of approach, I have to say that I don't think Callum still was overextending. He was overreaching. So when he tried to throw his hooks, his left hook, or his left hook to the body, he found himself in a position where he would miss a lot of shots because his shots would go past, either over, under, or just past Artur Beterbiev. Now here's the thing though. I think if Callum had a couple other fights before that, he would have gotten his timing better and he would have found his range better. Beterbiev started the fight with a flurry, so he was trying to establish his presence. He was trying to get Callum to understand the terms of engagement. He was trying to control Callum. from the jump. So he was first, and he tried to throw a flurry of punches to keep Callum in line, so Callum wouldn't be throwing his jab. Whenever Callum threw his jab and backed Beterbiev up, Beterbiev wasn't doing anything. He wasn't throwing any punches. Kind of like what happens with Lomachenko. When you start to back up Lomachenko, these very aggressive fighters, they don't really throw many punches once they're being backed up. And it was the same thing with Beterbiev. He wasn't throwing a lot of punches. And this is when Callum actually had control in the fight. He was able to dictate the pace of the fight. Callum showed me a number of very good things. His defense wasn't bad. He did get caught with a shot that stunned him in the 7th round, and I think in the 6th round. I think that was the end of him after he had gotten stunned. But for the most part, Callum was doing a pretty good job with his defense. You know, he was getting hit with certain shots, but not flushly. And Beterbiev wasn't really hurting Callum for most of the fight. He was bobbing, he was weaving, he was getting out of the way of shots, he was riding shots, he was rolling shots. So he was doing a pretty good job defensively against Beterbiev, despite what a lot of people think. They think Beterbiev was handing a lot of punishment to Callum, but it wasn't really. And Callum was successful with that right uppercut on the inside. He was throwing a beautiful right uppercut that snapped Beterbiev's head back. But as we all know, Beterbiev is very strong, right? This guy he fought at welterweight in the amateurs. And he is basically a heavyweight, right? He didn't fight at welterweight, sorry. He fought at heavyweight in the amateurs against Usyk and so on. So he's basically a heavyweight that's shrunk down and sort of gutted to a light heavyweight, okay? So Beterbiev is very strong. We know that. He's been hurt before. Callum didn't really significantly hurt him, but he did get his attention, and he made Beterbiev actually go under the back foot after certain shots landed. Callum was stealing some shots to the body. You know, his right hook to the body was brilliant. He jabbed to the body as well. All of these things were good. He just didn't do enough of it. I don't know what happened. I don't know. Maybe he came in depleted. I don't know what happened. But he wasn't, and of course some of this is Beterbiev's, it's Beterbiev's, to Beterbiev's credit, but he wasn't the flush, fluent Callum that we were used to seeing that would pick his shots and throw his shots. However, having said that, he did a lot of good things in that fight. He used his jab. When he used his jab, even though he got countered over his jab a couple of times by Beterbiev, who would pull counter him or just throw over the top. And Callum tried to pull counter Beterbiev as well, but he just couldn't find the range. He kept on overshooting his shots. So he was a little bit more tentative because of that, because he was overshooting shots and then getting countered by Beterbiev. And Beterbiev had these short chopping shots, as he always does. And of course, if you try to clinch up with Beterbiev, that's even worse, because then he really starts to roughhouse you on the inside. And he's physically stronger. He was physically stronger than Callum as well. He was moving Callum around and positioning him and using his forearm or his blade to position Callum where he wanted to land certain shots. If you notice, Beterbiev would use his forearm here or this forearm here to rest it against, it's called framing. He would frame where he wanted to hit. So he would frame wherever Callum was. But Callum was equal to the task. He was dipping under the shots, you know. He was rocking and rolling, bobbing and weaving, all that kind of stuff. So he wasn't really getting hit with a lot of shots until I think the 7th round, 6th round and the 7th round. He did get hit with a couple of shots that really got him out of there. But Beterbiev was actually challenged by Callum. Callum's defense was what was keeping him going in that fight. People say Beterbiev had a exemplary defense. I don't think so. I think he got caught with a lot of good shots by Callum. It's just Callum couldn't find his range. He kept on overshooting certain shots. You know, he couldn't find his timing perfectly either. It seems like he was pushing certain shots. So and again, Beterbiev did start off with a flurry of punches, which may have thrown Callum out of his game, or he might have felt the thump on his arms and therefore take some of the energy out of him, because he kind of fought sort of lackluster throughout the fight. He was pushing punches and stuff like that. So maybe some of his energy was drained in the first round. Who knows? But he was trying to fight back, and eventually Buddy McGirt stopped the fight. Um, I would have loved to see what would have happened if Callum could have gotten up, because he did get up, but in time to fight. But Beterbiev really finished him. He went for the finish. But there's a couple other things I want to say. Again, Callum not as quick as sharp as Beterbiev, and then his footwork wasn't the greatest footwork in the world. And it's something I didn't get. I didn't understand why Callum would take a step back. If you know that you're successful at pushing this guy back with your jab, and you're pushing him back, and he's not throwing any offense, why wouldn't you, when that's working, why wouldn't you persist with that? I don't know if he was energy depleted and therefore he needed to fight off the back foot. But I thought even Buddy McGirt said, "Hey, man, you can't be fighting off the back foot with this fight. Stay off the ropes." And for a couple of rounds, he was doing that. And I didn't see him using certain pivots again that would reset the situation. I saw Beterbiev using those pivots, but I didn't see him Callum Smith using the pivots to come off the ropes. He would back into the ropes, and then he'd bob and weave and all of that, but he wouldn't move. He wouldn't pivot out from the ropes to the center of the ring, which is what Beterbiev did. So for that reason, for several different reasons, what people were saying was Beterbiev was, extraordinary in his performance, and he did some homework. But I think that by and large, Callum didn't commit to using his jab enough. That's one. Even though he was getting countered, he should have used it because it was a great weapon. Whenever he used his jab properly, he would push Beterbiev back. And the second thing that Callum did, which was a bit, it was on and off, which it really worked to his advantage, was throwing that uppercut up the center, you know. And so Callum Smith, doing those kinds of things, really brought forth. He wasn't competitive, but he at least was able to bring forth something of worth to the fight. Now he didn't have the footwork like Beterbiev. Okay, Beterbiev I thought had better footwork than Callum. Kind of again he was very lopsided. He was very sort of plodding. He wasn't light on his feet. I thought that Beterbiev actually was the lighter guy on his feet. So let's talk about the Bivol fight and how that would play out, and how that's different. Bivol's not Callum. Bivol's sharper. Bivol's quicker on his feet. He's lighter on his feet. Bivol really knows how to maintain range. Bivol's been more active than Callum. Bivol also is very sharp with his shots. Callum fights range from far distance, but Bivol can fight at any range. Okay, he prefers to establish range from the outside, but he can fight from any range. The other thing about Bivol is the pivot work is different. Okay, so there's a lot of elements that Bivol brings to the table. Besides Bivol also fighting at light heavyweight much longer, and acclimatized into light heavyweight much longer than Callum has. Callum's only been there for a couple fights, right? So all of those reasons, Bivol has an excellent jab. Bivol has excellent combinations off the jab. Bivol shoots straighter shots than Callum. Callum loops a lot of his shots to get around the guard because he's so long. Bivol also knows how to work angles. Bivol understands spatial arrangements and angles very, very well. He has great timing. He also varies the speed and pace at which he will either move or throw his shots. He's kind of an in and out fighter. He kind of gets in and out. And he has really tight pivot work. He knows how to get out of corners. If he needs to keep the fight in the center of the ring, he keeps the fight in the center of the ring. So there's just so much that Bivol brings to the table, including championship experience at that weight class that Callum misses. that allows Bivol to do things that Callum just couldn't do. But Callum did some really good stuff in there. Don't get me wrong. You know, when he worked his jab, he got results. He was able to feint certain shots and get the jab in, and vary the jab from head to body, mix it up, throw in that right uppercut, which really worked. Throw some hooks off the jab. So he was able to do some things, but why Beterbiev was able to push him back was because Beterbiev he had quick feet. He would feint as if he's coming in, feint as if he's coming in, and push Callum back because Callum needed that distance. And Callum didn't realize he was pushing him to the ropes, and he kept on doing it over and over and over. He wouldn't be able to do that with Bivol. So there's just a lot of things that favored Beterbiev, and Beterbiev was well prepared, obviously. Where a fight with Bivol is just a totally different beast. And as I said before, I will not apologize for it. I truly believe Bivol will beat Beterbiev. But this was a nice fight for Beterbiev to build his confidence when he faces Bivol, which I believe is going to be the next fight. It's a good fight for Beterbiev, a confidence builder, long rangey guy. But the long rangey guy he was just not equally as quick as Beterbiev. He was able at times to adjust his angle to make sure that he kept the length. He kept Beterbiev at bay, but Beterbiev would get foot position on him and cut that angle. Beterbiev basically, okay, so this is me here. I am orthodox fighter here, right? This is my right hand here. This is my jab. What Beterbiev would do was he would sidestep. He would come over here, where my power hand is, but he's at a safe distance. And he'd make his entry point here because this is a shorter distance, but longer travel for this right hand to hit him. So he would come in off that angle instead of coming from on this side of the jab. Because if you come on this side of the jab, yes, you're protected. I can't throw my right hand across my jab. But the problem with it is it's a longer distance. So my jab would quicker hit you than your jab would hit me. So he came up the center here. It's kind of like if you throw a spear jab, where you slip a guy and you throw the spear jab up the center. You're now directly in line with the guy's right hand. So if he were to throw a right hand down the center, he'd catch you. But you bluff him. You feint him and you get him. You bluff him and you throw that jab, the spear jab up the center, real quick. And that's what Beterbiev was doing, but he did it differently. He would position his body. He would come from the outside. He would step to the side to get that position and come in off the jab. He would leap in off the jab towards the guy. That was a little trick he was doing to cut distance so he could get his jab in. Because of course Callum's much longer. So that's what he was doing. But Callum kind of got smart to it, and so he would pivot with him and he would throw his jab and catch him with the jab. And so, okay. That was what was happening in that boxing fight, in that boxing tournament. Now, as to whether or not you have Bivol falling for those kinds of little tricks that Beterbiev is doing, again, you could tell Beterbiev had Olympic pedigree and all that kind of stuff. I don't think so. Bivol won't fall for those things. Besides, Beterbiev was able to dictate in this fight. Right? That's why the fight seemed easier for him, because he could dictate. And yes, he's strong. Yes, he has great power. Yes, he has 100% knockout ratio. All of that's well and good, but the problem with that is this. Yes, Beterbiev is an elite fighter at 175, but he hasn't come up against a fighter like Bivol. That's the thing. He's come up against strong punchers. He's come up against guys who could really bang. He's come up against guys with some skill like Anthony Yarde, but never had championship experience, never really get to refine, use the IQ like they really should. So he had these bang out things with Anthony Yarde, who also performed very well against him. But by and large, the caliber of opponent that Bivol is, I believe Bivol is a gold medalist and all of that. The caliber of fighter that Bivol is, and his boxing IQ, While Bivol makes things look simple and easy, Bivol's boxing IQ is way up there. And Bivol is defensively responsible. Out of all the fighters we just spoke about, Callum Smith, Anthony Yard, Joe Smith Jr., these are not guys who are elite defensive fighters. And when you come up against an elite defensive fighter like Bivol, it doesn't matter how hard you punch. It doesn't matter how rough and rugged your style is. It doesn't matter how strong you are. It doesn't matter how many knockouts you've had. Because when you meet somebody who has a simplified version of who's been watching Pernell Whitaker since he's a child, been boxing since he knows himself, it's different. When we think of Floyd Mayweather, how many punches has he fought? How many guys who were knocking out everybody? Remember Diego Corrales versus Floyd. When we think of guys like Mike McCallum, Mike McCallum never got stopped in his career. Floyd never got stopped in his career. Canelo's never been stopped in his career. These fighters have defense. And even though Canelo lost, I think, 2 fights in his career, his defense is what kept him from getting stopped. And Canelo has really great defense. And so I've never been worried about Canelo being, when I hear people say, oh, this guy's going to stop Floyd, or this guy's going to stop Canelo, or this guy's going to stop Pernell Whitaker, I don't listen, because you can't stop those guys. Defensively, everything they do is defensively minded, even their offense. So it's like, they have layers upon layers of tactics for defense. And Bivol's a fighter something like that. He's much more simplified. He's not as complex as, say, a Canelo or Floyd in terms of his defense. And his defense is not just his offense. And Bivol has a great sense of distance and range. He knows the range he needs to fight at. That's just perfect for him. So it's very, very, very difficult to beat those kinds of fighters. And just because you're strong and you can punch real hard. Remember, Bivol's not a big 175 pounder. He's grown into the division. He's fought guys that could probably knock him out, if it wasn't for his defense. And so what I'm trying to say is that Dmitry Bivol is not one of those guys that, a boxer can knock out just like that. Okay? I don't care what that boxer's been doing to other boxers. This is not the same. Bivol's not the same kind of boxer like those guys. And I know my boy Lonnie B is going to disagree with me on that. Lionel will disagree. Lionel Thompson will disagree with me on this. But Lionel's talking about how hard Beterbiev punches. But Mike Tyson punched very hard. And Evander Holyfield stopped him twice. Beat him twice. Mike Tyson punched like a mule, and yet Buster Douglas was able to beat him. See, if you pay attention, Deontay Wilder punches like a horse, and Joseph Parker and Tyson Fury beat him. How? It's not just about power. It's about IQ. It's about what you know. Boxing's about what you know. Fighting is about what you know. It's what you know. And not just what you know, but what you know that you can do. You can know something, but you can't do it. But you know and you can do, and you can do it at the highest level. And it has to be done like that, right? On the drop of a dime. So making adjustments and those kinds of things. And that's where I think that Artur Beterbiev versus Bivol, I think he falls short. All right, Bivol's been doing it all his life. He's really good at what he does. It's not just amateur style boxing, as people like to say. No. This is defense. And it's something I think a lot of people do not appreciate in boxing. If you look at the best boxers in the world, a lot of them are not one-hitter quitters. They don't have the one-hitter quitter punch. I mean, Terence Crawford's an exception to the rule, but for the most part, most of them are not one-hitter quitters. Okay? Tyson Fury's not a one-hitter quitter. Alexander Usyk's not a one-hitter quitter. You need I go on? Devin Haney's not a one-hitter quitter. These are the top boxers in the world, right? You don't have to be a one-hitter quitter to win. And most times, one-hitter quitters don't have long careers. They're They're tremendous fighters, some of them, but they're still, because of their one-hitter quitting uh, 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 um, mentality and their acumen, they can't, because of their gifting, they can't really fully, uh, you know, develop their the skills that they have, because their gifting sometimes cripples the fights. The fights end faster if they don't get to really experience the nuances of what the persons they're facing. You know, so if you're stopping everybody early, you're not learning much by stopping people early. Because your power sort of overcompensates for the other things you want to show in your game. So you need some fighters who could stay with you and fight with you. That's why Sergey Kovalov, the Crusher, who great boxing IQ and stuff like that. It really only his boxing IQ could only be extended until he met a fighter that could stay with him, and his power wasn't the main factor. It was now about his boxing skills. And you have to understand that that's the thing that a lot of fans get carried away with. They get carried away with power, and they get emotional. They don't think. They're not thinking anymore. They're not using logic anymore. They're just being emotional about things. And when you are emotional about things, you find yourself in a position where you're not thinking logically anymore, and you're not really going by what the sport actually is about and what it does. And so you start to get carried away with, oh yeah, this guy could knock this guy out. He's knocking this guy out. Oh yeah, he's gonna knock this guy out. But you're not studying who is the guy who are the people he's knocking out. What do they bring to the table? What are their skill sets? What is their intrinsic how are they built intrinsically, emotionally, spiritually, and physically? What point in their lives they are at? All of these things you have to ask yourself, because there are also variables in the equation, But mainly you want to look at skill set, because this is what the boxer would bring into the ring. And a lot of times we do not do that. Or we don't know what the boxer brings into the ring. We watch fights and we really don't know the style of the boxer or what the capabilities of the boxer, because a lot of boxers today, a lot of people don't even know the styles that they implement. There's several styles boxers implement in the ring in their own way. And they have a particular style, yes, sure. But the descriptor, how you describe their style, sometimes is not very accurate. So, let me give you an example. So when I talked about Teofimo Lopez, we know Teofimo Lopez is a mid-range fighter, right? He likes to fight in the pocket. This is where he's most effective. When he's outside of the pocket, he's not very effective. So if you pot shot him from outside the pocket, easily you could take the fight. Sandor Martin was fighting him from outside the pocket. Now, George Kambosos wasn't fighting him from outside the pocket. He was fighting in the pocket with him, but he was a good counterpuncher. He would counterpunch Teofimo Lopez's counterpunch. But how he dropped Teofimo Lopez was as a result of a shot outside of the pocket. He reacted outside of the pocket, came into the pocket. He went in and out. He went into the pocket and landed that overhand right on him. And Teo is open for that overhand right to this day. To this day, he hasn't done anything to change that. So, but what I'm saying to you is this, that if you do not understand what's happening in that ring, in terms of skill and ability, then you are not able to assess how matchups could happen. And you're going to use all kinds of other things besides the skills of a fighter or the abilities of a fighter that they use in the actual ring that they're in. Sometimes we get it wrong, but for the most part, when you start to do a breakdown, you begin to understand skill is involved. I am what you need. You guys have been watching this video. Don't forget you can donate via PayPal. It is in the description of the stream, but I will also put it in the comment section when this stream is over. You guys can share this video with other people. I hope you like the scenery. I hope you like this video, the stream. God bless you all. I'm going to catch you guys later. Peace.